Hi, everybody. Welcome to the November 17th Annapolis Environmental Commission. I am Bevan Bucheister, and I'm the chair of the commission. I'd just like to start with roll call, and I'll just call out the members that I see here. We have Ann Stevenson, the vice chair, Randy Rowell, Jeremy Hansen, and Bill OLeary, and then myself. So we do have 5 members. And since we are down 2 members, that does constitute a quorum, so we can vote on our September and October minutes. Let me put it to the commission. Would you like to just vote on them together, put them together, or do separate votes? Did anybody have any changes to the minutes?
I had a change to the September minutes, I believe. I'm just pulling them up. Oh. I think I caught a typo.
There was one typo with my name in September. That was the only thing I had found with them.
Yeah, and then Allison's name also has a typo. So I think with those changes, and okay. We have a Word doc, so we can make those changes and submit the minutes as approved to Hillary.
All right, sounds good. So yeah, let's just vote on the September and October minutes together. All in favor of approving the minutes? Or were there any changes to October minutes?
I'm sort of relying on everybody else having done their homework for the October minutes.
Okay.
I was absent in October, but
okay.
The September minutes look okay to me.
Okay, so Bill can't vote on October minutes, and then we don't have a quorum for October minutes. So let's just vote on the September minutes.
I think we
still do.
We still do.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Okay, great. Then let's vote on both of them together. So,
okay, Jeremy, I'm looking at you. Make a motion.
Motion to approve both sets of minutes.
Second.
I second that.
Okay. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? And none opposed. So September and October minutes are approved unanimously by the present members. So next on the agenda, we have 2 guests, Larry Bradshaw of National Lutheran, and they are the applicant for the Providence Point development over off of Forest Drive, and then Kevin Johnson, the project engineer, and they're going to tell us about the current application for the Providence Point project. And then after that, we have Director Mike Johnson, the director of Annapolis Public Works, and he's going to talk about Parkside Preserve and some of the issues we talked about last month and what the city is doing to make some improvements in their process and inspections and things like that. So with that, let me turn it over to Larry and Kevin. Oh, Ann, did you have a question?
Well, just to remind the members that we've been asked to write a formal letter about the Providence Point project that we're about to hear about. So an outcome from this meeting will need to be the letter. And, you know, it could be that Paul or Bevan, who have been involved in the project for quite some time, will be the authors, but we'll have to listen closely so we can discuss any particular points we want to make in our official letter.
And I will, thanks, Ann, for reminding everybody. And this is the continuation of the project that was proposed many years ago that was called the Crystal Spring Project, but then ran into some opposition from environmentalists and the commission here. And there was all kinds of issues about how many trees were being removed and, you know, ephemeral streams and stormwater and things like that. But there was a large group that got together and worked on those issues. And I think they have mostly all been resolved now. So we're hoping to come in and support this project and bring this for full circle. So with that, let me turn it over to Larry and Kevin.
Well, let me just jump in real quick for a second, Larry.
Oh, sorry.
So the group was led by Gerald Weingrad, and it's called the Concerned Citizens for Proper Land Use. And Gerald has, in that group, have come to terms with Larry and National Lutheran, and has agreed, if these terms are all incorporated into their permit, to withdraw the environmental and citizen groups' opposition to the project. And they center around stormwater control, flooding, in transportation issues, egress and egress to the property, and also forest conservation and no net loss. So all of those concerns and conditions have been met as of right now. And as long as they're incorporated, then the citizens will withdraw opposition. So now I'll turn it over to Larry.
Thanks, Jackie. Thanks, Bevan. Thanks, everybody, for inviting us to join tonight. And again, my name is Larry Bradshaw. And when I started this project back in 2010, I was the president and CEO of National Lutheran, but I did retire in August, but I'm staying on as a special advisor to NLCS to get this project over the finish line. So I guess I haven't retired yet, but this is my only responsibility for National Lutheran. So it's quite different, but it's still very exciting. And then Kevin Johnson, as Bevan, as you said, Kevin is the president and principal of JBA Associates, who are doing all of our engineering for the project, civil engineering, and also working with wetland resources regarding the trees. So Kevin and I will kind of run with the ball tonight. We've both been involved with the process a long time. And I don't want to be duplicative in my comments. So I think what I'll do, Bevan, if you're okay with this, I'll make a kind of a broad overview of what the project is at this point, what it is not any longer. And then Kevin will speak specifically to details around stormwater management and the forest conservation plan, which are two of the biggest issues. And then I'll come back and talk a little bit about traffic and then the required conservation easement. And as Jackie stated, we have worked very closely with Gerald Weingrad and his group over this past year. Gerald and I have worked very closely with the city in coming to an agreement, as Jackie said, assuming all of this is incorporated. And everything we're going to talk about tonight is really coming from a letter that I sent to Gerald June 28th prior to the submission to the city that really outlined all of these issues and outlined all the commitments we were willing to make. So that's something we can certainly provide to you and is part of the submission, which is with the city. And it may be on eTrack now. I'm afraid I'm not skilled enough to find eTrack a lot of the times, but it is part of the submission and was sent to her name just went on my Dr. Sally Nash, who just left. So everything you're hearing today is essentially the same thing as Gerald. So I'm just going to kick it off real quickly and talk about the project. So as Bevan alluded to, this project has been in front of the city now for almost 11 years. As it started 11 years ago, it was a mega multi-use project with a continuing care retirement community, significant amount of retail, a boutique spa. I think there were even talks about a movie theater and a pretty elaborate project. It was started those few years ago with a development firm from Connecticut. We came on board in 2011 as the sponsor of the CCRC, or the Continuing Care Retirement Community. And the developer's responsibility was to develop the rest of the property. So that's kind of where we started in 2010. And where we are today this is now just a senior living community. This is a continuing care community, a life plan community, whatever you want to call it, but it has 3 levels of care. We'll have independent or residential units that will encompass about 302 units. 30 of those units are cottages, 216 units are apartments and in a 5-story building. And then there are 56 Mason Court units, which are 3-story buildings with parking at ground level. And each one of those buildings has 28 units. So that's a total of 302 units. Additionally, we have 16 assisted living memory care units that will be built into the community that will serve only by law. It can only serve individuals who are in the independent living units first. So you have to go through independent living to get, I'm sorry, I misspoke. You have to go through independent living first to get to skilled nursing, but the 16 memory care or assisted living beds can come directly from the outside. So that's the 48 beds, healthcare beds. You add those two together, we have a project of 350 units, and that's it. That's the most that can ever be built. I'll go into further restrictions later on in the presentation, but there will be no commercial services. There will be no restaurants other than what is in the main building of the continuing care retirement community for the residents who are there. So there really will be nothing that will attract the public. It will not enhance or not provide more traffic. There will be a small coffee shop that will be on the main road to the building, which I suspect someone could stop there if they were riding their bike and go in and grab a cup of coffee. But in my experience of way too many years, and I want to admit tonight, 39 years, people just don't come into the CCRC community unless they have loved ones there or something else that they're there. So the project will be 350 units. It will be on approximately 52.5 acres. I think all of you may be aware this entire site is about 175.6 acres. It's currently, the only thing on the property currently is a horse farm, an equestrian center that is, and also a wellness center, which is there for the treatment of some cancer patients in Annapolis. And then Mrs. Janet Richardson Pearson has her equestrian center there. And those two items will stay. There are some opportunities for expansion of the riding facilities and the equestrian center as it is now, but for the most part, it is very limited to any additional development. The wellness center has outgrown its facility there, and as part of this process, there will be a new wellness center that will be built on Spa Road, and certainly Kevin can talk a little bit about where the location is on that later on. But other than that, this project will have no future development, either through the conservation easement that has been agreed to by Mrs. Richardson Pearson and Scenic Rivers Land Trust, and on our site, which will not be part of the conservation easement, we do have a restrictive deed covenant that will be put in place once the project is finalized. So that gives you a little background. The four areas that we have focused on, really in collaboration with Mr. Weingrad, Senator Weingrad and his group, were around four areas. One was forest conservation and assuring that we were able to meet the no net loss provisions of the city. Stormwater management, again, whether or not we can meet the requirements of the 125% of requirement that is now part of the city, and then the conservation easement, and then traffic. Those are the four big areas. In addition, we have done a phase 1 archaeological study on the site. There were several individuals in the city who felt as though there could be some artifacts from the Civil War, especially around the parole facility, but that was just not found during that phase 1. That study is with the city and is part of the public process, and also Senator Weingrad and his group have that study. And I can just tell you, although that's maybe not that significant in this meeting, I can just let you know what was there, because sometimes that's kind of a curiosity thing. Basically, they said the study results indicate that the site was a, quote, late 19th to 20th century artifact scatter, likely associated with dumping activity along Crystal Spring Farm Road. The survey did not reveal features or artifact patterning, suggesting the site could contribute meaningful data about the development of rural Anne Arundel or suburban Annapolis. As such, it is recommended not eligible for inclusion in any further study. So that was the results of the archaeological study. So at this point in time, that gives you a background of the project. I'm going to turn it over to Kevin to talk about the specifics of specifically forest conservation and the stormwater management. And then when he's through and you've been able to ask your questions, I'll talk a little bit about traffic and then the conservation easement. Then we'll open it up to more questions, if that's okay with you, Bevan. Okay, Kevin, thanks.
Thank you, Larry. Thank you, Commission. It's a privilege to be here tonight. I'm signed in twice I'd like to share my screen on my laptop, which is a slightly larger screen than my tablet. So if I'm looking away, it's to try and accommodate my weaker eyes. It's a privilege to be here, and we're really excited to have gotten to this point. It has been a little bit of a long haul, and I'm going to kind of clip the top of the waves, and if there's any more detailed questions that you have, please follow up, and I'll try and answer them the best that I can. But in the interest of time, I want to hit the big picture items, and you know, and like I said, if there's any questions, we'll be happy to follow up. If everyone can see my screen, what Larry described is kind of the voyage that we've been on for the last 10 years. The original, just to kind of back up, of the 175 acres that the property project limits have, there are currently 99 acres of forest cover outside of the critical area, and another 25 acres of forested area within the critical area, for a total of 124 of the 175 acres is currently forested. When we look at the bulk of that, so the critical area is down here, and we can see the 25 acres that is forested in that zone. And then when we look at the project 10, 11 years ago, the disturbance really was very impactful to the bulk of the forest that was on the northern end of the property. It went through several iterations with cottages and continuing retail in the back. And with all of our discussions and coordination and work with the community and the city, the final outcome was that we wanted to pull away from the meadow down towards Crab Creek and the associated vernal pool that was adjacent to that, the tributary to Crab Creek, which feeds down off the property, and pull everything up against Forest Drive. And so we have reduced a great amount of clearing down to the lesser limit that we've shown here now of 27 acres of clearing up against Forest Drive, trying to keep away from the most sensitive areas. When we talk, I'm going to switch to another drawing here. Whoops, wrong one. That kind of shows an overview of the whole project, and this is part of our preliminary forest conservation plan. I wanted to speak quickly about stormwater management first, in that we've approached this with a tiered level of treatment with environmental site design features. The first layer would be green roofs associated primarily with the large roof area of the main building, the areas that we could capture there. And then all of the impervious areas throughout the limit of disturbance then drain to individual bioretention planters or surface bioretention features. Over 70 of that.
Lost you. You might be frozen.
It looks good on my end. Am I not?
Oh, sorry. I think it's probably my end. I just got an unstable internet message. Sorry.
No worries. Over 70 individual bioretention planters and surface facilities to, in the true spirit of environmental site design, picking up the water and treating it, filtering it as close to the point of land that the water falls on. And that is the bulk of the stormwater management, and in fact treats 120% of our required ESD volume. So with the green roof, the bioretention planters, credits for rooftop disconnect, we reached the goal of the city's goal of 125% of ESD volume, which also has the contributing fact of essentially controlling the 25-year storm back to its pre-developed conditions. So not only are we really enhancing the water quality volume, but also by the nature of the devices, then provide a level of quantity control so that we're reducing the runoff. Going above and beyond that, we're also providing porous pavement in the driveways of 28 of our 30 units of villa units. We're not seeking stormwater credits for those because we're, if we find that over time or even initially that the ground doesn't percolate, then you get less impact from that, but we still think it's a vital part of the groundwater recharge. And then I think more importantly, we are looking to restore 500 feet plus of another tributary to Crab Creek that is greatly eroded right now, that discharges from the middle school across Spa Road, so that under the old regulations that would qualify for water quality volume treatment. So that is again above and beyond what's required to meet the city goal of 125% of the ESD volume. I know that there's been a lot of discussion over the years about forest conservation, forest retention, and no net loss of any cleared forest area. And this exhibit of the preliminary forest conservation plan, the initial or the existing forest is shown in green here, and this area in here is the 27 acres of clearing that we need to develop the project. The areas in orange are the areas throughout the 175 acres that we're going to reforest. And let me just get my numbers straight here, that we have a little over 23 acres of reforestation, 24 acres of reforestation throughout the farm. And then that coupled with 3.5 acres credit for street trees along Skipper's Lane, which will be extended from Spa Road to the western terminus of the project, where we anticipate it'll be picked up under a future project to connect further west and the Loop Road and Crystal Spring Road. We have 195 street trees that we're planting as part of our mitigation of the clearing. And so we will meet the no net loss requirement of the city with our reforestation street trees planting. And I just wanted to point out now I'm frozen up. Okay. So there was another drawing that I wanted to try and show, but it shows the street trees, but it also shows the, which is accounted elsewhere in our PFCP, that we have a large number of landscape trees that aren't counted for forest conservation. But the result is that with all of the plantings, including the landscape trees, that there will be more canopy coverage in 15 years at the conclusion of this project than what exists on the farm today. And we think, that goes a great deal towards meeting the master plan goal of expanding and retaining the canopy coverage throughout the city. So the only other point I wanted to make at this point is that we have made application to MDE and the Corps of Engineers for their confirmation of the wetland delineation, and also for their approval of the stream restoration work. So that's in process, and we hope to have that in the coming months as well. So that's a brief overview of that. I'd like Larry to touch on the conservation easement restrictions, and then I think we can open it up to any further questions that you have.
Yeah, Kevin, if you could leave that drawing up, I might just speak to that if that's okay. So as Kevin mentioned, he talked about the 52.5 acres. So when we were working with Senator Weingrad and Scenic Rivers Land Trust to put the conservation easement together, I probably want to go back because I think I do want to give kudos to Mrs. Richardson Pearson because when she annexed this property back in 2006, the plan was to build about 700 single-family homes on this site, and she didn't want that to happen. So she purchased the land back then, and as a component of that annexation, she promised to provide 75 acres of permanent conservation. So this expands on that a little bit. So of the 170, I always get that number wrong, Kevin, 179 acres, 124 of those acres, 127 of those acres will be subject to a conservation land easement with Scenic Rivers Land Trust. And what that means is there can be no development. Scenic Rivers Land Trust will certainly have, if there was any kind of changes to be made, or if trees were to come down in a storm or anything like that, Scenic Rivers Land Trust will be there to assure that we do what we've committed to do to maintain the canopy, as Kevin just mentioned. So that conservation easement has been drafted. It has been, and Jackie, if I say this wrong, please kick me under the table. But it has been approved by Mrs. Richardson Pearson. It has been approved by Senator Weingrad and his crew. It has been approved by National Lutheran, and I believe it has been approved by the city. So all parties have agreed to that concept, so there can be no further development on that land. In addition to that conservation easement, as I mentioned earlier, on the 52 acres where the project will be located, there is a restrictive deed covenant that basically does the same thing. Scenic Rivers Land Trust did not feel comfortable, excuse me, including in the easement a piece of property that had such significant development on it. So we agreed, and as a part of our filing, have agreed to a restrictive deed covenant on that property, which will basically eliminate any further development of the property, other than if we needed for life and safety reasons, or the state regulators would come back and say, just as an example, you need to build an external fire escape on the building, we could do something like that. But as far as adding additional units or anything that would expand the footprint of the building, we are specifically precluded from doing that. So all 179 acres, once the project is completed, will be basically, there will be no further development other than just if Mrs. Richardson Pearson needed to modify a barn or a riding rink or something on the equestrian center, that is certainly acceptable for agricultural reasons. But anything else on the project would not be accepted. So one of the concerns about some of the opponents of the project was, well, if you get this part in, then there'll be further development. That just cannot happen. The other thing is the traffic. And so, Kevin, if you can kind of help me point as we go here. So what we really are doing four things. We did an external traffic study in association with the city, and we did find that this project adds very few trips during the rush hour time. I don't have the data in front of me, but I believe it was about 64 trips in the morning and about 80 trips in the afternoon over a 2-hour period. So you don't have a significant amount of traffic added to this project. We can modify our staffing schedule to bring people on. We do have 24-hour, it's a 24-hour operation, so we can bring individuals on at different times to avoid rush hour. We have had conversations a couple years ago now with the middle school principal about when the traffic gets more significant on Spa Road in the morning and the evening, and we can certainly make our schedules, modify our schedules to make sure that we avoid those kind of times where we have any kind of large scale traffic. The individuals on this project who live there will have cars and they will travel, but I can tell you from experience, they will, and as now as I'm retired and I'm getting older, I like to avoid rush hour too. So I can certainly understand that. You'll have individuals going to medical appointments and things, but most of those trips will be off peak hours. That being the case, even though we're not adding a significant amount of trips, we are doing 4 things to mitigate traffic. One is we'll be widening the south leg of Spa Road, approaching Forest Drive, to add a second northbound left turn lane. So in other words, as you come up north, as you can see Kevin's, we will have a second northbound left turn lane that will go onto Spa Road. The resultant lane used for this approach would be double left turn lanes and a shared through and right turn lane. So as you come up, if you don't want to turn left, you will have a shared through and right turn lane on the side, which should facilitate some of the traffic coming north. The second area that we will mitigate would be a new deceleration lane on Spa Road for southbound right turns, accessing the development right at Skipper's Road from Spa Road. So there will be a second entrance to the project, as Kevin is indicating there, and there will be a decel lane coming south on Spa Road to allow individuals to enter the site. Well, thirdly, we'll be converting the intersection of Forest Drive at Crystal Spring Farm Road to a right in, right out only intersection to remove any potential conflicts for westbound lefts entering the site and northbound lefts exiting the site. And finally, we'll be changing the southbound lane use at the intersection of Forest Drive at South Cherry Grove Avenue from a shared through left turn lane, a dedicated right turn lane, to a dedicated left turn lane, and a shared left through right turn lane, while maintaining split phasing in the north and southbound directions. So all of those 4 things are included in the plan. And we feel as though, and our traffic expert has said in public and to the city, that while the traffic on Forest Drive is certainly not ideal now, matter of fact, it's significantly less than ideal, that the traffic flow should be better after the project is built versus what it is now. So that was kind of our goal in moving this forward. As I said, the other thing we'll be doing, we will be looking to expand or assist in expanding Skipper's Lane to the west through our project, right, as Kevin is showing. We have had conversations with the developer of that property right to the west of the green area there, and also the American Legion. And we've also talked with the city, both the mayor and the city manager, about collaborating to get that relief road connected and taken farther to the west. So could take some of the traffic off of Forest Drive from as far west as the Safeway and the shopping center there through to Spot Road. So those are the things that we're doing on traffic. And let me get my notes to make sure I'm not forgetting anything.
If I could
Yeah.
just project.
Yes,
one thing
please do.
that I forgot to talk about was, and I've had many conversations with Bill and Janet, and one of the things that is been very important to them throughout this is the wellness house, and which is currently located, I guess, over here right now. So we preserved an area of existing pasture. There's no trees in this zone along Spa Road. It's existing horse. They take horses out in field trials and what have you. But we've reserved an area here for a new wellness house facility to be constructed at some point in the future, and have, to kind of increase the buffering around it, have worked our reforestation around that area so that there's a protection for the families and the patients that are utilizing that facility when that hopefully comes to fruition here in the not too distant future.
I wanted to jump in and just add one more item that you didn't cover in your presentation, and that was your second letter of commitments that this group will be very interested in because of experiences we've had at Parkside Preserve development. National Lutheran provided the second letter to provide greater communication and transparency and keep the public up to date on what's going on so that we're not in a reactive mode. People are well informed ahead of time and there's good communication. And they're providing the cell phone number and email of the on-site construction manager to the city and to Gerald and or his designee, as well as a hotline for questions and to address concerns that are brought up by citizens in the area. The construction manager will hold off-site periodic meetings at least every 6 weeks during the sediment and erosion control, during the grading phase. And then later during the project, they will hold meetings every 6 months. Anything else that I'm missing from that?
No, Jackie, I'm glad you mentioned that. That was next on my list. So I was,
Oh, I'm
because
sorry.
I was gonna, no, that's fine. So I think not only have we really talked about just the land use that we do, but we have, as Jackie has just mentioned, we have talked about construction management being very significant. And really that was, again, conversations with Gerald that Gerald and I both had, Senator Weingrad and I had, just about concerns from the city. And so again, it's been a good collaboration. And I think we've got a good process in place that we'll be giving everybody's Kevin's personal cell phone and personal email address. Just kidding, Kevin. No, we've committed to do that. And really, when we build projects at National Lutheran, we do partner with the city. You know, Kevin has been our project manager in Montgomery County and Rockville. We just completed a project there. A lot of the same environmental concerns about erosion and sediment control of the project. And we take that very seriously because it is a place where it is disruptive to the neighbors living by and other people. So we take it very seriously that we try not to impede on their personal space and their residence as we build this project. But yeah, thank you, Jackie, for mentioning that. The other thing I do want to emphasize, again, I think Jackie said it earlier, we have an agreement with Senator Weingrad and his group, but the agreement is predicated that all of these items that we have talked about actually are included in the final plan from the Planning Commission. We intend to have our first Planning Commission meeting on December 16th. I believe. And so I have no reason to believe that it won't. We've also had a great working relationship with Tom Smith and city planning to get this going, and everything that we have done in this submission, we have done collaborating with Senator Weingrad and his group, and also Tom Smith and city planning in their group, because we didn't want to go through this exercise again and have to come back with 100 comments. That just wasn't a good use of anybody's time. So we maybe, Bevan, that goes to some of your comments about lessons learned. I think we did a really good job of really working with city planning and their team. I know Kevin worked very hard with Matt Waters on stormwater management. And Senator Weingrad and his group did have some stormwater management experts and some land use experts. We worked with them also to really get to a good place. So I'm excited about the project. I think it's going to be really good for the residents. We have about 60 plus individuals who have signed contracts to move in. When it's done, we have to have about 150 to start construction per state of Maryland regulations, but we're really excited about the project. We think it's going to be great for those residents who live there, but I think it's going to be great for the city of Annapolis. You've heard the environmental issues, you know, Kevin talking about increasing the canopy, the no net loss, just all those things make this a very, very, just a very, very economically friendly, as friendly as you can get when you build facilities. But I think everybody is proud of what we've come to. And again, I do need to give kudos to Mrs. Richardson Pearson. She's just been throughout this whole process wanting to be a friend of the environment, looking to get the best possible answer for the city of Annapolis. So I would thank both Janet and her husband Bill for all of their really hard work in this resolve anyway. Also, so Bevan, I'll stop
Great.
duplicating and I'll listen.
Yeah,
listen
thanks.
to any
Thanks so much,
questions.
Larry. This is so exciting to see this project come in. And I just have to say, I wish this is the project that came in to us 10 years ago, and it would have been it's taken a chunk out of all of our lives. I know I've been on this commission for 8 years, and this is one of the reasons I ran for mayor in 2013 because of what looked like the city was going to allow to happen. So yeah, this is
I'd like
really
to say I
great.
had hair at the start of the process,
Right.
but I didn't have hair then either.
Right.
But Bevan, I don't know if you know, I think Ann has her hand up.
Yes,
don't know
I
if
see Ann's
Okay.
hand, so I was just about to call on her, but yeah, this is great. And you addressed a lot of our concerns. We have, had our own experts looking at the stormwater and the forest conservation, and I think it resulted in improvements to our forest conservation law in the city. So it's really moved the ball forward on a lot of things, and it's so good to see that the canopy will be more increased when the reforestation grows. So Anne, go ahead. Let's hear your question, and other members just raise your hand. And I think, let me just say that we have a few other commission members that have been on for the whole time. It was Paul Murphy and Bill O'Leary have been on for the whole time. So they know, they have the whole background and lost hair or gray hairs from this as well. But go ahead, Anne.
Thanks. I appreciate the presentation, and thanks for talking about the Skipper's Lane pedestrian access. As somebody who walks on Forest Drive to go to CVS and try to do as much shopping while walking, I wondered what you all are doing as part of the development before that sort of continuation of Skipper's Lane is there. Are you expanding the sidewalk? What else might you do to sort of make pedestrian access to all of the shops and services on Forest Drive more available to both the folks living in the development, but also all of the middle schoolers who are trekking to and from school and have a really dangerous walk?
Sure, and I'm sorry I failed to bring that up earlier. Part of what we're going to be doing is providing a 10-foot shared use path along the entire property frontage from essentially Hilltop down to Hunt Meadows on, adjacent to Forest and Spa to really, promote, that biker pedestrian access throughout this corridor.
And so what happens when you get to the I can't remember, it's there's a food truck there, it's the Legion maybe on
okay.
Forest Drive?
Sorry. We can't speak to this area right here. I do know that as part of the extension of Skippers up to Newtown, I can't remember if that's the correct street name or not. But obviously that development will continue the connectivity to the west. So hopefully that, the network will be complete once all of those projects come through, as well as some of the city improvements.
So Ann, if I can expand on that, we have a contract with the Legion that basically, we have purchased an amount of land there that will allow the relief road to go farther to the west. And then the idea would be, once we purchase the land, then we will give the land to the city at no cost, and then the city could build that relief road to the west of the project. I don't know, that has not been designed yet, and I think I don't know where the city is in that process. I haven't spoken to the mayor or the city manager about that project, but we do have that contract in place. And I did speak just a couple weeks ago to the developer of the project immediately to the west, and yeah. Somebody saying something? I kept hearing hello.
Yeah, I heard something too, but
okay. So anyway, Ann, I don't think that's been designed yet, but I think there probably will be some resolution to that.
Okay, well, and maybe that's one way we can support you in our letter about the project, is to sort of encourage the sort of continued conversation around, those pedestrian connections, which would be a great amenity for lots of folks who live around the area and not just your new residents. So thanks.
Oh, I see Bill O'Leary's got his hand up. Go ahead, Bill.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for the presentation. I had a couple of questions. One of them was on the areas that are going to be reforested. And forgive my ignorance, but I'm not sure how that reforestation project works. You hire a separate company and then have some kind of budget each year to make sure that the saplings are being maintained. I'm not sure how that works. Could you touch on that for a moment?
Sure. So in the 24 acres of reforestation area, right now we're showing that we're going to plant over 7,000 trees in those 24 acres, and through all of the guidelines, depending on the size of the caliper, you need X number of plant units per acre. And so we'll meet all of those, and to provide variety and to really make a successful reforestation project, we're going to vary those sizes in different areas, and even within those areas. The maintenance agreement that we will enter into, and I believe is part of the conservation easement, is that we'll monitor. We have to provide invasive species management to clear out, vines and other undesirable plants that are growing currently, and to keep those in check while the reforestation areas become established. And then, not only that, one of our biggest problem neighbors are the deer. So we'll be providing collars and other protective measures on the younger trees, and we'll continue to monitor and maintain and replace as needed over the initial 5 years to help that get established. So while the initial planting may be done through our general contractor, or whether we contract that out separately with a landscaper, we'll determine that as we get closer. But obviously there'll be a landscape maintenance company that will be doing the monitoring and maintenance during that establishment period.
Okay, thank you. My other question was regarding water pressure. This is going back several years, but at one point I thought that the measured water pressure in that area of the city was considered low, and there was the need to have a pumping station. And I was wondering if, because the size of the project has now become smaller, if the water infrastructure is now changed.
I don't have a complete answer for you. We did a flow test at the hydrants out on Forest Drive late in the summer, and provided that flow data, which wasn't, and the flow and pressure at those hydrants was not bad. And turned that over to Public Works, who was going to run that through their hydraulic modeling. I have not looked for or seen those results yet, so I can't say specifically that they identified any issues. But again, I agree that with the decrease in density and the fact that our tallest building's 5 stories, while we may need a fire pump in that building, I'm not aware of any flow or pressure issues with the providing water main system.
Okay, thank you. One last question. So after the land trust takes over the conservation easement, do they then have the ability to, is there any option for public access or trails or things like that? Or is it strictly, protected?
Larry, let me take a stab through that first. We have provisions in the ordinance to provide soft trails, mulch trails, not hard paved surfaces, that would allow both our residents and the surrounding community to enjoy the protected forested areas. We haven't identified those yet because we think it's most appropriate to kind of field locate those from both a grade and alignment to miss significant trees and to minimize the impact of that trail network. But certainly the intention is to make this continue to be a public amenity, bird watching, wildlife observation, and just a great green space for all to enjoy, all critters.
Okay, thank you.
So was that a commitment, or was that to provide trails, or was that something in the easement that it says you may create trails?
Not this, Larry, but that's a commitment.
Yeah, that's a commitment, but also the easement does allow for that.
Mhm.
The easement does not allow for hard surfaces. But yes, it's, and I think as we go through the planning commission, we have had conversations with Tom, and I think that's Tom's expectation too. So, and it will be good for our residents too. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's a
Yeah, that's
commitment,
exciting.
but only to, as Kevin said, not for hard surfaces, so we don't
Mhm.
enhance or make the impervious surfaces a
Right.
problem.
All right, that's exciting. Thanks. Randy, you have your hand up.
Hello, hi, my name is Randy. Thank you for providing this detailed description of your outlay. Looks great, and I really like some of the ways you are capturing some of the stormwater and replacing some of the green infrastructure through some restoration practices. One of the things I try to aim my scope for mostly in my input or comments on these types of projects is kind of from an environmental justice scope as it relates to the close proximity it will be to a public housing community. And so my questions are kind of just, there is a issue going on in the city, and we call it the tale of two cities, which is that some of us have access to certain things that others don't through different socioeconomic challenges and barriers. So gentrification is a real thing. And so, my question is kind of how you are planning to make some of these developments accessible to some of the low-income citizens of the city of Annapolis that necessarily may not be able to afford the high price for some of these locations. And still, provide an opportunity for some of those individuals. Also, another scope that I really try to hone in on deals with equity in small-scale environmental construction, like tree plantings or invasive species removal. Will you have any plans or preference for hiring minority-owned contractors to do some of this work that may even be from the local community? Because so often we see a lot of times installations like this take place that often take jobs away from some of our local citizens, or don't really take a particular interest in giving back to those areas that they're pulling a lot of resources from. So just curious about that. There's an opportunity to maybe even hire some, add some diversity to your hiring practices for some of these green infrastructure developments like tree plantings or invasive removals, or even things like, info maps and such that highlight leaders or influential champions from the local area. Just little touches like that. I'm just really curious how this project will kind of take a lens to, the consideration of what's behind them, which is Newtown 20, which is a very much a suffering neighborhood. And, what opportunities, or, could it be like some training programs? Because that Newtown 20 is under renovation right now as well. And I'm sure with the reopening of that community, having been a big part of the reopening of Annapolis Gardens community, I know that they're going to be looking at some ways to kind of up the ante or raise the social economic interest in that community. And so training programs that may hire people from these communities to do some of this green infrastructure development work. Just wanted to know if you had thought about those things, if you had any thoughts on it.
Thanks for the question, Randy. We have had that conversation a lot. I've spoken at length many times to Walter Vasquez, who is kind of head of the Latino community in Annapolis. I've also spoken to the mayor about job fairs and training programs throughout the city. So we've spoken about it a lot. How do we do that? We usually try to work locally. I mean, our workforce is a lot of nurses, a lot of housekeeping positions, dining positions, service-related positions that is really has to be from the local community. So there will be some training, there will be some opportunities. We have not had all the details on that ironed out, but certainly that's the expectation. I think that I have, that the mayor has, that Mr. Vasquez has in the community to be doing some of those things. So yeah, I think there'll be some real opportunities there, and we've had conversations over the last years about how we do that best, and we just are still, we're still 3 years away from opening, so we've got a ways to go. But we've also talked about construction jobs and those type of things that on the site beginning hopefully in 2023, late 2023 when we start construction.
Cool. And just dealing with the environmental health, because I mean, there's a community aspect to this as well.
Absolutely, which is a huge aspect to it.
Yeah.
Totally agree. Yeah, totally agree.
Yeah, thanks, Larry. Larry, didn't I thought National Lutheran also had, nationwide, they also had some help and some support for lower income people to become residents of the.
We don't. What we have is we have a benevolent care program that individuals come in, like some individuals may come into, especially the healthcare component, because that's usually the one, a need-based service, something happens. And if they come in, and once they come in the community, they've never been asked to leave, ever. Never asked anybody to leave for a lack of being able to pay their bills. So we provide about $5 to $6 million a year in benevolent care throughout our system. And we anticipate the same kind of program here when we open.
Okay, yeah, and we would be interested to see if you could work with the city, and we will push the city to help get some maybe minority contractors involved in this replanting, or like the trail building and things like that, and the environmental jobs, the stormwater.
Bevan, I think that's more the expectation than that we've had, only because it's such a difficult labor market. We'd love to have job training programs that could just facilitate all the individuals that we can in Annapolis coming to work on the site. That's the best of both worlds. If we can do that. So, but that does it's going to take some collaboration, and if you have some contacts or some directions you'd like for us to focus on who we could talk to. I mean, certainly Mr. Vasquez has been stepping up, but I'm sure there's other community leaders that certainly we probably get involved with also to be able to enhance that, because it's in all of our best interests. I mean, if we can put people to jobs, have really good training programs, and work in the community, within the community, that's the best of all worlds.
Right. All right. Thanks so much, Larry. We will put you in touch. And I know Randy has a lot of connections with the community and the small businesses as well.
Yeah, perfect.
All right. Any other questions on this? Oh, so what's the next steps? You've submitted the application, right? And then it's going to the Planning Commission, December.
So Kevin will tell me if I'm wrong here. We've submitted our application. I believe the various agencies within the city have taken a look at it. I know Kevin has had some conversations, and we have made some minor changes to the project to satisfy Public Works and other such things. The next step would be to go to the Planning Commission on December 16th. What Tom Smith is telling me is that the Planning Commission may do this in as many as 3 nights. We're hoping that we don't have that many public speakers that makes it longer. But I think the planning commission is being diligent in saying it's going to take more than one night to do that. We had the forest conservation plan public hearing last
Wednesday.
a week ago today, on the 10th. Comments on that hearing are open until November 29th. And then if there's anything that significant comes out of there about questions, those would probably come back to us and may also go to the planning commission for comment. But those are kind of the next steps that we have. In the meantime, we had just finished our design drawings just this month on the project. So we'll be getting ready to go into construction drawings and continue to market the project. So that's where we are.
Okay, thanks. Great.
Kevin, were you going to say something, Kevin?
I was just going to say that the application that's before going towards the planning to the planning commission is the plan development application. Once we hopefully get our approval of that, then we'll move into the permitting process and the construction document phase, with the goal of getting that approved in 2022.
All right, great. Commission members, I know we haven't actually looked at the plans yet or really studied the letters of commitment in detail. I mean, that's usually something that we do before we, come up with a position and vote on it. So,
Bevan, would it? I don't know if you have the letter. I could certainly send to you if you haven't seen it. The letter that I sent to Gerald, and also the subsequent letter I sent to Dr. Nash. If you would like those two documents, if you'll give me an email, or you want to shoot it to me and shoot me your email. I know we're live on YouTube. You may not want your your email. But if somehow the best way to get it to you, just let me know and I'll be glad to do it.
Okay. All right. And we usually take a look at the plans and everything and then have a discussion about that. So I'm not sure if we're ready to take a position. I know I've been keeping up with Gerald this whole time and looking at all the agreements, and I'm satisfied and I'm happy that all the things that we've been talking about and taking positions on for years about the stormwater and the forest and the replanting, I'm satisfied with that, but I'm not sure if the rest of the commission has seen all these materials or any of these materials. So
I'll tell you what, Bevan, I think I have a whole bunch of on the invite for this pride. I have a whole bunch of emails.
The only thing I would add is
I see yours, Bevan. I'll send it to you.
Okay.
On eTrack, if Ann,
let's have Kevin and then Ann.
On eTrack, under our application is PD 2019-001. All of the documents that we have provided to the city and responses and communication, all that is available for you all to view at that location if you don't have other access.
Okay, thanks. Ann.
I would say that I think writing a letter about this project is consistent with the vote that we've taken, where we don't need to review every letter before voting. And I would feel comfortable, especially for you and Paul and Bill, to move forward with the letter since you've followed this project so closely. I did take some notes about Randy's comments and Bill's, which I can share with you as you write the letter to, include this current feedback. But I don't think we need a formal vote. I don't know, but defer to others if you do.
Okay. Yeah, Bill and Paul, since you've been on for so many years and all the previous things that the positions we've taken about conserving more forest and treating more stormwater and replanting on site, those were all the things that we've been pressing, and I think this new application meets all those requirements or overcomes all those previous objections that we had. So are you all comfortable with taking positions to support this?
I am.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. And then
the planning commission would need your written comments to the letter before the 16th.
Okay. All right, then I'm comfortable then proposing that we do write this letter in support because it has met and overcome all of our previous objections on that we've submitted for many, many years. So regarding the stormwater and the forest conservation, and I don't think we commented on the traffic because that wasn't really in our purview, so.
Yeah, and I think that we can add some of these things about
Right.
sort of pedestrian connections in the greenway
Mhm.
and also highlight the ways the Environmental Commission can support the project in terms of
Mhm.
environmental justice and workforce trainings. We can
Right.
add that.
Okay, all right, that sounds good. All right, is the commission comfortable with that? Just want to make sure.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
So Anne, should we just take a vote to do this letter? Then we can, I think we should. All right, let's hear a motion to write the letter that we had just described, supporting this project.
I motion that we write a letter to support this project and submit it to the city.
Great. And a second?
Second.
And all commission members in favor, say aye.
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 And any opposed? All right, the ayes have it, none opposed, so we will write a letter in support. So Larry and Kevin, thank you so much. It's been a great 10 years with you.
Thank you very much. It has been a little bit of a
Yeah.
slog, I might say,
Yeah.
but we're very, very excited to get to this point.
Yeah, we're very pleased as well. And very pleased that Mrs. Richardson Pearson was very supportive of the increased canopy and all the environmental protections as well.
She's just a friend of the environment and just a real,
Great.
a real great advocate for the city of Annapolis. So it's been an honor to work with her on this and to work with you. So thank you very much.
All right, well, thank you all. And you
Good.
are welcome to drop off and enjoy the rest of your evening.
Okay, thank you all
Thanks.
very much. Appreciate it.
Yeah, so the rest of you all have to stay on. We are going to turn now to Director Mike Johnson, the Director of Annapolis Public Works, and let him tell us about the improvements that they're considering and some of the issues at Parkside Preserve. We did talk about a lot of them at our meeting last month. There was some enforcement issues raised about this other development, Parkside Preserve, and some suggestions made to the city, and Jackie had told us, what the city had been doing, going out there and trying to correct all these issues that they saw. So with that, let me just turn it over to Director Johnson.
Okay, good evening, Chairman Heister and other members of the commission. Glad to be here to to talk with you about the revised ESC, erosion sediment control protocols that the city is adopting. As you mentioned, the Parkside Preserve development has had sort of a troubled, I would call it that, history. It's been with one developer, then flipped to another, and we started receiving a lot of complaints regarding a lot of the sediment and erosion and sediment control practices on the site. And it necessitated a tremendous amount of staff time to begin to address that. We began to have very frequent inspections, up to like 4 times a week. The inspectors were on site. In addition to the inspector, also our stormwater engineers were there. We had 2 or 3 MDE inspections. And we worked with the developer to sort of bring the site into compliance. And we learned a lot from the entire process. And what I would like to speak with you tonight about is the process that we are following and that we will adopt for large sites, including the one that was just presented. So if I could share my screen, I will proceed with my presentation. Can everyone see?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Just to make sure. Sometimes I don't get it to move. So did it change? Did the screen change?
Yes, we can see it.
Yes. Beautiful.
Yeah,
Okay. Great.
looks good.
Okay. So So basically erosion sediment control, I think, just sort of laying this out. I know everyone on the commission is very knowledgeable about this, but erosion sediment control sort of means, system of both structural, such as are shown in the graphic below, the picture below, which is a sediment basin, and vegetative measures that minimize erosion and offsite sedimentation, which is the goal to protect the Chesapeake Bay ultimately. So in Maryland, the soil erosion and offsite sedimentation is controlled through some fairly rigorous statutes. The first is the Code of Maryland Regulations, the COMAR 2617, the 2011 Maryland Standards and Specs, which are sort of like the quote unquote, standard that all sites are required to meet, to comply with, and the Stormwater Management Act of 2007. The city code in chapter 1708 6160, which basically adopts, incorporates, and complies with the COMAR standards previously mentioned, stipulates some general requirements that have to be met in order to minimize site erosion during development. A grading permit is sort of the main vessel that is used to sort of do this. And this is issued for sites that have a disturbance of greater than 5,000 square feet, unless it's a waterfront lot where that threshold is lowered to 2,000 square feet. The permit stipulates conditions that the site must comply with, as well as the order of the work. And that, of course, it can change if things are found on site to sort of necessitate that. Before, one of the problems that, in air quotes, that we have is that the city's code, ESC code, and Deputy City Manager Guile and I've had several conversations around this, is a dated code. It is not, it was written at a time when the city seems to have been organized in a different way. And this will sort of like make the point here that the grading permits, while they're issued by planning and zoning, the director of planning and zoning is currently responsible for the enforcement of the city's ESC statutes. Really, I believe that should probably reside with the Public Works Department, because we have the staff, the inspectors and the stormwater engineers and so on like that, who would be able to sort of do that. But we're responsible for performing the grading permit inspections. One of the other problems in the code is that the grading permits are not tied in any way to the beneficial use being issued for the property under development. So this also serves to weaken the enforcement. And there are lots of legacy projects that really, the developers did not really comply with the city's statutes, because there was nothing that really sort of bound them to do so. They could get beneficial use without doing so. So it speaks to a need for us to sort of modernize that code. But so that's in a future plan. So due to issues experienced on several of the large development sites, and we are defining large development sites to sort of match what MDE considers for like a very thorough inspection. These are sites that are greater than 1 acre in size. So the Public Works Department has revised the city's erosion and sediment control inspection procedures for these sites. And it's really done to sort of address a lot of the problems that we're facing here. And these are pictures of Parkside Preserve. Here on the left, the picture on the left, you have one of the bedevilers on this site, which was a turbid flow. This liquid that you're seeing there contains particles that are so fine that they go through the number 200 sieve. They cannot filter out. They will not settle out in the sediment basins. So that practice is more or less ineffective in dealing with this type of liquid. Mm. And on the right, this is their entrance. You sort of notice that the tracking pad, the construction, stabilized construction entrance was also had some deficiencies. What we had them dig this up, and it was discovered that the previous developer had not built it in accordance with the standards. I'm not sure how that happened, but they had not done that. So we required that to be repaired and to conform with the current MD standards for pursuant to that. And I'll speak a bit more on the project on the left, on the item on the left with the turbid flow as I go through this. So one of the changes that we adopted, and I'll sort of segue a little bit, I had read years ago, I was very interested in sort of quality and in standardizing outcomes. And one of the things that I read was that in hospitals, you used to have fairly serious accidents that occurred. And they seemed to go something along this line, that you would go in for a particular, maybe for an appendicitis, you might not have coming out without a kidney, or you'd go in for your right hand to be operated on, and you'd wake up and you don't have a left hand or something. I mean, I might be exaggerating it a bit, but the point is made that really, that even though the surgeons are very well trained, very skilled, very experienced people, there was a process problem that caused these sorts of mistakes to occur. And one of the ways in which when they studied it, they found to sort of get a replicatable result is through the use of a fairly simple tool, a checklist. So that the checklist really then forces you to sort of train yourself to go through a repetitive set of steps each and every time to ensure that you get the same results. And if anyone has had major surgery, you'll notice that the surgical team asks you the same questions 2 or 3 or 4 times, depending on what type, the nature of the surgery. You know, what's your name, date of birth, what you're here for, blah, 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 and so on like that. And that is sort of coming out of this practice. If there's any variance in that answer, it sort of like flags for, a greater intervention. So barring that sort of idea, one of the big improvements that I made to this process is to develop a checklist for use for the site inspections. Our inspectors, while going to the site and reporting, what they found, as they sort of walk through, we're not using this sort of checklist approach, so that each time their inspection could have variation. And we did find that when we went to the site a few times, that there were things that, were not necessarily at the top of the list in terms of like seriousness. So they may not have been focused, they might have been focusing on other things, but it really gave the impression that we were not really following sort of like a uniform way of doing the inspections. So one of the things that I developed it, and then I wanted to pilot it to sort of see how it worked in the field. So the first version of the checklist was a paper copy, and I have a graphic of it a little later on in the presentation I'll show. But when I trialed it, it took the two inspectors, nearly 3 hours to complete the inspection of Parkside Preserve, which is about a 20-acre site. So that was a bit of a problem for me. That was not something that is sustainable. We don't have, we had too many large sites in the city, and we really couldn't have that amount of manpower spent each time they did an inspection. So what we did was to digitize the checklist using our GIS system, which is an ArcGIS, and the tool was Survey 123. And that sort of simplified the process and allowed the inspectors to complete the inspection. And they're currently around 2 hours now for doing the inspection. It's a little longer than I would like. I would think an hour and a half, but 2 hours, if that's where they are, if that's what it takes, I could live with that. So we do have sort of like a digital version of the checklist. And this is used every time the inspectors go to the site. They're looking at every feature on the site that they should be looking at. And then that is uploaded into ArcGIS. And here into sort of eTrackIt. And this is an example of what the checklist in the paper form looked like. Mm-hmm. So this, you notice that this is sort of following pretty much what the MD general requirements for the stormwater permit for construction require. So they're going to look at discharges, earth slides, concentrated flows, turbid flows, things of that nature, and an entire exhaustive and very granular inspection of items. And this is an additional page referencing the Comar statutes, stabilizing haul routes and parking pads, any permanent stabilization, stockpile protections, which had been an issue on Parkside Preserve in the beginning, silt fences and so on, and things of that nature. So it basically was like a 5-page sort of a document that was very encompassing. So the checklist, as I mentioned, it serves as a written inspection report, and it will be posted on eTrackit once the inspection is completed. And one of the benefits of this is that it reduces administrative time, and that a PDF of the report will also be sent to the developer as soon as the inspection is completed, along with any orders to cure deficiencies. So they would get that contemporaneously. So it would happen as soon as they close the report, as they've completed that. And that would help to reduce the amount of staff time taken to sort of do a thorough inspection. As mentioned, it ensures a comprehensive review. It's more efficient administratively, and it gives us an easy referenceable record of site deficiencies. And that is the basis that we would use for citations. Now, there was some disagreement in the manner in which I prefer to use citations. And, it is sort of like a progressive, my preference in working with developers and contractors is to get cooperation from them so that they understand what my requirements are, expectations are, my being the city. And, if they are compliant with that and are making good faith efforts to comply with that, we tend not to be very heavy-handed with citing the contractor. In my experience, that can kind of backfire a bit. What you really want to do is to work with them. They're very experienced, many of them, particularly the bigger ones, and often have really good ideas on how you can address vexing problems that are on site. So going forward, developers of future large development sites will be required to develop and maintain a project page. And that project page would be, sort of the document on which, or portal on which, everything on the site would be required to be reported. The good, the bad, and the ugly. So that the copies of schedules, so that residents are aware of what is going on, which phase the project is in. Your NOI reports, which are the, which are a big deal regarding erosion sediment control. Any violations that are observed on site or issued on site would also be listed there, so that everyone can sort of see what sort of developer this is in terms of how they're performing on the site. And the developers of future large development sites will also be required to hire a third-party erosion sediment control inspector. And one of the reasons for that is also, again, to add a layer of accountability. In other words, if the inspector is often hired by the developer, they may, even though they're qualified, they may not be as objective in terms of their reporting of what they find as if it is a third party who has no direct involvement or connection to the party doing the building. So those are also two embellishments to the process that I think would sort of, one, increase transparency, and two, ensure that the inspections are performed in a way that everyone is sort of satisfied they're being performed. One of the big issues, this goes to the picture that I showed a few slides back, that we're being worked on with MDE, is how to treat turbid water containing fines that will pass through the number 200 sieve. And in something like that, liquid that contains that, basically the silt basins, the sediment basins that are in the manual are ineffective. The water will sit for, I don't know how long, months, years, possibly, without any change in the turbidity and in the color of the water. And when you do have the inevitable intense storm, that water will go through the high flow, outlet, and you'll have turbid flow discharging. That's sort of what was occurring on Parkside Preserve. So there were a couple of things that we did. One, we required at Parkside Preserve the developer to pump out the basins which are closest to Quiet Waters Park, which are on the low end of the site, the current low end of the site. It hasn't been built up yet. And they were required to pump that up into basins that were on a higher portion of the site. And we also put in additional step pool system that can sort of hold more water on site. It could deal with flows from a higher return storm, right? 50-year storm, something like that, so that you have less water flowing off the site, and it would sort of hold a lot of the this turbid flow that was being a bit of a problem. We also ensured that they were stabilizing the haul routes more, that the building pads, proposed building pads, were stabilized, and that we put check dikes around, water that is sheet flowing from the sediment piles, the stockpiles, and things of that nature. But basically, once that turbid flow got into the sediment basins, there's really very little that can be done under the current practices with MD. And when MD was out on site, we sort of spoke about that, and they did acknowledge that was a problem. So with what they asked us to do was to work with the developer to come up with a series of experimental practices to see if we could address that concern. One of the obvious things to do, in quotes, would be to use flocculants. I'm really concerned about using that, and lots of people are, because the flocculant is a chemical, sort of like binds with the fines and will settle it out, much as if you're trying to clarify water, right, drinking water. But the effluent coming from that, if it's not, it's sort of not in a very controlled environment. So, we don't really know what the chemical impact of sort of flooding that out into the what it will have on the biome that is adjacent to the site. So we're really concerned about that. And that's not something, I think MD had used it years ago and had moved away from it because of some concerns related to that. So we didn't go with that. So what we've recently done, and the developers in the process, I think, of finalizing the installation of this, is that we're piloting, the developer is piloting a hydrocarbonic purification system. And this system is borrowed from the concrete industry, like where you're building, like if you're building, say, bridges or doing repairs to bridges over a water body, your processed water that's used to mix the concrete or your wastewater cannot have any sort of fines in it, because you'd be polluting a very significant water body. So this technology is used, the water is flowed through this process plant. It's sort of a portable plant, which then treats it and removes the fines, so that you get water of, that is clear and fine-free from to flow out as your effluent. And that is currently being installed on the low portion of the site adjacent to Quiet Waters Park, where the problematic sediment basin is, sediment basin number 7. And we will try that and see if that works to sort of remove the turbidity from the water. If it does, it may be a practice that we, the city of Annapolis, when we do our rewrite of our ESC code, will adopt. Now we have to work closely with MDE on this, because this is not in the manual. So we want to make sure that what we're doing is agreed to by the prime regulator. They're the authority having jurisdiction. They sort of delegate, inspection to us. So we can't really get ahead of our skis with them on that. So we want to work very closely with them to make sure that they are approving this for use on as a measure for dealing with turbid flows. So I mean, it works well in the concrete industry. Probably, I'm hopeful that it will work, but the jury's still out a little bit on that. But in the meantime, those basins on the low end of the site are empty. They're not, they're pumped out routinely to the higher side of the site. So there's no chance of any flow, even if we do have very heavy rains. The pumps are run continuously to ensure that water does not flow into those basins and so to discharge into the park. So, I mean, that's it in a nutshell there. So I would just stop at this point and sort of ask if there are any questions that anyone had on what I spoke about.
Thanks so much, Director Johnson. And I'm so glad to see that you have taken these issues that we have brought up on numerous, for many, many years, over many years, these enforcement issues, and you've taken like a process and procedure approach to fixing them. So it's not like, like a one-off, like it's not like, okay, at this one site it's happening and this is a problem, because we've seen it's kind of been a systemic problem for years and years and years. So I'm so glad you're taking a process approach to it. That's really, really encouraging. Also, it's great that you're trying something new, and we do have Jeremy Hansen on our commission, and he's works with the Bay Program's expert panels to approve new technologies for pollution reduction. So I'm thinking, hey, this will be really cool if Annapolis figures something out, and then we can send it over to the Bay Program for approval there and get it spread, Chesapeake Bay wide. That would be really exciting, really cool. Let me open up the floor to the rest of the commission. Either raise your hand or just go ahead and unmute. I don't see any hands raised. I see Randy's hand raised. So I'll call on you, Randy.
All right. How you doing, Mike? Good to see you today.
Hey, good to see you, Randy. How are you?
This evening. All right. Thanks for your detailed response about the coding. It's very helpful for me because I don't really know all the codes by the back of my, so that's very helpful information. Last time we met, I brought up just a couple ideas, and since you're here, I just thought maybe I'd just mention it. Is there a possibility that in the future the commission could create some type of relationships with some of the developers where when contracts are awarded, we could have some type of preliminary meetings to identify different communities of practice or community organizations or particular historical and cultural context for the locations that they'll be working in. Just kind of get a breath for how we can kind of better bridge, foster that relationship or kind of that handing off experience so that maybe we can learn from kind of what took place at Quiet Waters, whatever we learned from it,
Yes, I sort of the way I sort of see it, it's a little difficult for the city to mandate, excuse me, to a private developer programs like that. They would sort of have to take the lead on that as good corporate citizens, so to speak. The way that I would sort of see us being able to address what you're raising is that in the MS4 permit, which is the stormwater permit that we have, there are two of the minimum control. There's 6 minimum control measures that the state requires the city of Annapolis to have as part of their to make progress on their permit. And 2 of those deal with sort of like the community outreach and sort of public education components. And those we have recently taken over. Those Public Works has recently taken over those minimum control measures. So we have the entire permit under our purview. So one of the things as we're beginning to plan out our strategy for future years would be that I would see that those 2 measures would be excellent opportunities to sort of like introduce communities that have not before been involved in matters like this or have an interest in participating in matters like this on site. So our new Public Works facility over at 39 Hudson has sort of a community room which can be used for educational purposes, or it will when it's built in a few months. And I would sort of see us sort of having sort of more routine sort of training opportunities and public engagement kind of opportunities so that the public is really informed as to what is going on and some of the science and technologies behind pollution control on sites. I think that's how the city might be most effective in addressing that. Sort of telling a developer what to do, you know,
Well, no,
yes,
I
no,
wasn't.
maybe so.
Yeah, no, I definitely wasn't meaning that at all in any way, shape, or form. Definitely not requesting that. I was just more so just I don't know, just in a dream world, I could see developers getting awarded a contract and then somehow, shape, or form interacting with our group, where we can say, okay, great, congrats. Here are some X, Y, and Z organizations that you may want to touch base with because they have an impact in that particular vicinity. And it could be environmental organizations, it could be community organizations, either or. I think so that's what I was thinking.
Jackie, I
don't
thought
really know
there
how I
were
could
some, yeah, I thought there were some requirements for meeting with the community, for the developers had to meet with the community. Jackie, aren't there some requirements already in the city code for that? I thought that was beefed up in the last couple of years, where they had to present to the community before they, you know, or when they're in the permit application process for the larger developments. Well, we can check on that. I'm not sure if she heard me.
Yeah, we don't have to take too much time. I
Yeah,
just was
okay.
throwing that out.
Right. Any other questions from the commission? I did get an email question from a group, and as you know, Director Johnson, you heard from the last from the last presentation about project that's taken 10 years to you know, get to a place where it is finally supported by us. That the city does have a very active environmental community, and they can organize very quickly. And so there's a group that organized around this project and the things that were happening around this project, the Annapolis Stand Up Coalition. And they had sent a complaint about some of the things that they said that they have not seen corrected, that they were marked completed on the grading permit plans, but they said that they have not seen that these things were completed. And some of it was stabilization around conservation easement areas and tree protection fencing and things like that. And they had said that they put in a complaint, and they said the city is required to answer them within 7 days. So they think this Friday would be the 7th day to get a reply. So wanted to check on that and the status of that.
Yes, I plan to, it's partially my fault, I was not aware that it was in the code, but I did go back and read the code pursuant to response times. And I plan to sort of give a response tomorrow, sort of draft a response to them tomorrow on the issues. I think one of the issues is that the site is large, and that, you know, while we do appreciate the complaints that we receive, you know, that they're being brought to our attention, there are many things happening on site that a person on the perimeter of the site would not necessarily be privy to, right? Because they're not actually talking to the developer staff or necessarily being really close on the site. So, you know, I think that, you know, the response, I'll respond, but I think that a lot of a lot of what the staff are finding on site is sort of actually improvements that the developer has made that someone standing who is not on the site would not necessarily see exactly what is going on. I think that could be part of it, but I'll send a response tomorrow.
Yeah. And you know, I took a thanks. I appreciate that. Oh, Paul. Was that Paul? Or I didn't see Paul's nose.
No, that was me. I froze up there a couple times. Okay. You were asking a question about public meetings. Maybe Mike already answered it.
Oh, I don't think he did.
No, I did not.
If you have some input on that, please go ahead.
I don't think the code does, unless it occurred before I started with the city, have a requirement for a public meeting. The public meeting, like the public comment period, is like when you go to the planning commission and they have a public comment period during that. That's usually The only thing that's required. So going forward, that's something that we can do. National Lutheran, as we pointed out in their presentation, they put that in the public meetings in their letter of commitment, that during the grading process, they would do it at least every 6 weeks. And then later in the construction project, about every 6 months. So that's something that I think, Mike, you covered some of that about.
Yeah, I thought I recall Ross Arnett putting this in legislation a couple years ago, that they had to have community meetings.
I can double check with them, but it wasn't in the last 2 years. It had to have been
right
almost 4 years ago.
Yeah, I think it was several years ago. So I think that might be a requirement. Yeah.
I don't know. I'll have to check
But
on that.
I think it was before they got the permits and things like that. So this site has already had permits and things like that, right? They've already had their grading permit.
Right.
I think it's pre-permit that they have to have these public meetings. Yeah. And the other question I wanted to ask was, so Providence Point is giving their information to Gerald. I don't know if they're posting it on site, but I know in other jurisdictions that that the project manager's information has to be posted on site, and it has to be not just an office that is manned during the weekday. You have to be able to reach them on the weekend, because a lot of rain events happen on the weekend, and then you can't. I mean, for citizens and citizen activists, and I took like a mini course in this before with one of the people that train us on Chesapeake Bay watershed issues, was the point is, we want the correction to happen. We want the runoff to stop. We want the developer to come out and stop the runoff right away. That's more important to us than the fine. We want to stop the pollution flow. So to do that, and one easy way to do that was to have somebody you could contact right on the project. As you're out on your Saturday walk, you see this pollution flowing, you want to be able to call them. You call the city and report it, and nobody gets the thing till Monday, so nobody's out to stop the pollution. So other jurisdictions have a requirement where you have to have something posted where you can contact the project manager weekday or weekend or evenings, and they'll get somebody out there to stop the pollution flow.
I think one of the issues with that is that and it, you could do that, but I would say this, that suppose we had say like a 50-year storm, for instance, right? Yeah, the practices that are on site cannot accommodate the flow, the flow from a 50-year storm. They're not designed to do that, right? I think they're around 2 years, something like that, right? So one of the, you sort of need like a procedure for pre-rain events, and you also need also some of the technologies I mentioned, that you would sort of ensure that if you do have a discharge, that you're not having sort of like turbid flow flowing off, because once it begins to flow, even the project manager came out, I don't think he or she can stop the flow from leaving the site during a very heavy rain event. So it's sort of like the horse is a little bit out of the barn at that point. You want to sort of make sure that you're doing it ahead of time, so that you have good pre-rain procedures, and you also have good sediment control procedures to ensure that you don't actually have any discharge. You will have water flowing off the site, but you don't want it to be sheet flowing silt, or to be turbid water, such as is the problem that we're trying to solve at the Parkside Preserve. And if our technology that we're piloting works, the technology that we're piloting works and is acceptable by MDE for use, then I think we would then have sort of procedures in place to ensure that heavy rain events, which could occur, as you said, on the weekend, anytime during the night, don't really cause the kinds of problems, because the person just coming to the site is not going to be able to stop a large volume of water leaving the site. Millions of gallons of water leaving the site.
And I was thinking not only the 50-year rain events, but I mean, I've done this with the city before, and just, there's just stuff coming off the site every day, and so it's just helpful to be able to contact them and have them try and correct it, rather than, calling the city and getting the city to find them. And,
Right.
I mean, the fines are so minimal anyway that it's kind of like the cost of doing business, frankly.
Yeah.
But
So they are supposed to
like-
have a contact number and on, it should be on the posted. And then going back to what National Lutheran's presentation was, they are making the email and the project manager's cell number available to Gerald and his consultants or his Gerald's designee. But also they're establishing a hotline. So for people to call in and messages on, which I think was a really good idea.
And see,
And
that's
they
what I'm talking about. You know, like that's what we recommended before that the city do for all construction projects, that, you know, if there's a hotline, so you can contact them and say, hey, you've got runoff coming off your property. And we do understand. And then that brings up, I mean, that helps just get the problem corrected quickly. They might not be able to do it during that rain event, but they can come and do it afterwards. But the other thing is that 50-year rain events aren't occurring every 50 years anymore. They're occurring like,
like every year,
several times a year, right?
That's
so that's
right.
another
You're
thing.
right.
Is
You're right.
looking at, you know, and I know Alderman Savage did want to have us start looking at what the requirements are and the standards, because they are not keeping up with the climate change and what's really happening on the ground here.
Yeah,
I'm
and to
very-
that point, I mean, one of the things that I plan to work on in this fall here is to begin to look at not only the ESC code, which is, as I mentioned, needs a bit of work to sort of tweak it, but also the stormwater code. The stormwater code that we have is a good code, but it doesn't really address the point that you made, Devin, that I don't think it addresses resilience in any real sense. And we realize that climate change is a factor that we're going to have to live with. The planet is not going, even if, you know, they got Glasgow, they adopted whatever, and they did what they said they're going to do, which is doubtful, the jury's still out. It's not going to cool the planet down sufficiently for us not to see the effects over coming years. So our codes have to sort of take that into account. So what we'll be participating in a major exercise to sort of modernize our stormwater code, and we would love to involve, you know, to have you guys involved with helping us do that. All right. So that's
great.
That's a project we'll be working on.
Yeah, thanks so much. And I see, Paul, you have your hand up. Go ahead. Paul Murphy, can you unmute? You'll have to unmute, Paul.
There we are. Hello.
Okay. Gotcha. You can hear you now.
Part of my question has been answered in the last couple of minutes, but are we going to have a hotline or some type of weekend phone call or phone access so people can, you know, and they may not be able to stop it right away. I agree with that, but I would rather have it stopped in the next 12 hours instead of 39 hours later. So is there going to be a weekend phone number, whether it's a project manager or a hotline, that is actually answered and responded to, or at least responded to?
Yeah, you know, I think that the permit requires, the stormwater permit requires the city to have a hotline, and you know, so the answer is yes. What that number is at this point, I'm not certain that I'm aware of what the hotline number is. I don't, or if we currently have it, but it is a requirement of our permit. So the answer is yes, we will have that, and it would sort of probably have to be sort of like a rotating. It would be assigned, like it might be a different person who answers it each time, but they would sort of be responsible for triaging the complaint and getting it routed to the correct person. And that's really a requirement of our MS4 permit. It's something that we have to do.
Oh, okay. So yeah, I think we had been talking about having the developer have their number up there.
Oh, the developer.
Somebody you could reach, but if the, you know, a city hotline is also
Yeah, I think the
know,
city is required to have a
alternative too.
hotline. Yeah, they're required to
Yeah.
have a hotline by the permit. So the developer could
Okay.
have a hotline, but I mean, I would think that probably reaching out to the city on matters like that might be better. It would allow us to keep a record of what is going
Right,
on.
okay. Yeah, so if that's posted on development sites, that'd be great.
Right.
Uh-huh. But I do like your approach to get the procedures in the ground before rain events, because of course we want to see that happen first before, the hotlines after the runoff is coming off the property. So I
Right.
do appreciate your,
Mr. Johnson, when do you think those pre-raid procedures and process could be put in place? Because yes, that's an admirable goal, but it's clearly not there now. So we do need an intermediate step until you feel the pre-raid methods and techniques are solid.
They're actually in place at Parkside Preserve right now. So one of the procedures that we require them to do is to empty the troublesome, I'll call that silt basin, sediment basin, which is basin number 7, which is adjacent to Quiet Waters Park, which is the one that had been discharging that turbid liquid, that sort of flow. And they are required now to pump that basin, keep it more or less dry. It doesn't have any water in it at all. And they've pumped it to basins on higher portions of the site. So that's one of the pre-rain procedures that would be followed. That might be a bit extreme because we're trying to address the discharge, but you could also have procedures whereby they're required to lower the water level. So that you increase storage to account for the type of storm that you have. I mean, it's hard to predict the exact storm that you're going to get. So those procedures are sort of being piloted right now. And the benefit of the Parkside Preserve as a laboratory for what we will adopt in going forward, we've sort of used it in the checklist, and then there'll be other changes that will come in the code, will be that we will see what worked and what did not work. And then we would sort of have some best practices that we would then use for Providence Point and some of the other big sites that are in the offing, right, that are still to come. But they are in place right now.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Paul, good to hear Smokey. We haven't seen him at our meetings in a long time.
He
We heard him barking in the
didn't bark.
background.
He had not been barking until I unmuted, I promise. So
Right.
I just
All right.
so
Hey,
just to
Mike.
wrap up on that is great. And you people have heard me over the years. I am more of a carrot than a stick guy, but I do agree that these fines relative to the scope of the project seem virtually insignificant. So not to open up too big of a topic now, but I think over the next few months, maybe we'll look at one way to get people to click their heels and race, run to a more proactive way is to make the penalty box have a bigger bite. So I'm just saying larger fines or drop, make the when things are not going properly, the penalty, however we do it, whether it's financial or a slight stop work, which is basically financial, I think there should be bigger bites. And from what I know I get it secondhand, but it seems like there's been too many instances. And if the instances slow down and it's not as much as I feel or others feel, then they aren't being, they're avoiding these fines. So I just think a little more financial bite wouldn't hurt. And for those actors who are playing well, it doesn't affect them.
All right.
Yeah, I
Thanks,
think
Paul.
that
So
I
maybe
think the
that's something.
fines.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
So I think the fines are sort of state. We have state mandates on what the fine thresholds can be, the maximum fines. I don't think that's under the purview of the municipalities. It's sort of set in COMAR, which is a state code. However, most developers, I mean, there are some bad actors. Most are not bad actors. Really, just need to have a clear understanding of what it is that we want. And if we are consistent, in my experience, if we are consistent in sort of dealing with them, if you're complying with what I want, then I don't really have to come at you in a very harsh way. But if you are sort of, not, you're sort of dilatory in your duties, you're not really willing to comply, you're sort of, being sort of, that kind of a way with us, then of course we could stop the work. We could, we could fine you every day, even though the fines are small, those can add up if we went that way. But that's really the last, I mean, I would think the most reasonable people wouldn't really want the working relationship to get to that point. It would be it's far better if you understand what I'm asking you to do and we have a respectful discourse with each other so that you comply with what I'm asking. And then I don't really have to be that harsh with you, but I don't have a problem being harsh, but it's not my first, approach, right? But if you test me, I mean, you will find that I can be quite firm in dealing with matters like this.
All right, thanks.
So, Bevan, I believe
yeah.
that, there should not be as many, and it's why things have calmed down. There shouldn't be problems really going forward as far as stormwater runoff at this point, because most everything that has been done there to contain the stormwater, the sediment there, the basins have been pumped out, and they're getting ready to kind of move on to the next phase of construction. That's correct, right, Mike?
That's correct, yes. Mm-hmm. They've stabilized much of where the townhomes are going to be, which is the upper portion there, Annapolis Neck Road, that has curb and gutter as well as it's paved. And they're still building up the low section of the site where the troublesome basin is, number 7. And as that gets built up, we're sort of using some of the experimental practices there to sort of see until they have it to a point where they can decommission the basin and sort of final stabilize that site, at which point these problems would disappear. We wouldn't really have that.
Okay, thanks. Well, I just encourage you all to keep in touch with the Annapolis Stand Up Coalition, because they have eyes on the site, and I think a lot of them live right next to the site. So they are looking into the permit and making really keeping eyes on it and making sure that it's kept to the letter of the law. So I would just urge frequent communication with them and keep us in the loop on that as well.
Okay, will do. I'll do.
Yeah, so thank you so much for your time tonight, Director Johnson. It's very encouraging to see all the steps you're taking and to see the procedure and process steps too that are going to improve everything going forward. So that's
no wrong kidneys taken out.
What did you say?
No wrong kidneys taken out. Right.
Oh,
so
yes, right. And I think that the doctors got that from aviation, because they always do a checklist, a pre-flight checklist.
Right.
Make sure they've got everything, they've got their big book
right.
there.
That's
so the
right.
planes don't crash. But yeah, I'm a big fan of checklists myself. Now we are at 9 o'clock and we should be ending this at 9 o'clock, but I did want to give Randy the last word, because Randy, you wrote to us today, to the commission, and told us about an opportunity you had to weigh in on some county maybe policies that they're creating for minority owned business, preferences for minority owned contractors. So
yeah, so
call out. Go ahead.
Yeah, so basically the gentleman, Matthew, I think is his name.
Matt Johnston.
He had emailed me and said that he appreciated my comments that I had made at the environmental justice panel. And he said that he would like for me to maybe add some comments like that to this group that could possibly be added to this plan. He said that was something that they hadn't thought about, but he said it was a great point, which then led me to think that maybe it would be really cool if the commission itself could review this plan together. And then we could, I don't know, maybe offer a statement from all of us, not just one of us.
Right. Okay. All right. And you sent us a link to the plan.
Yeah, and what I was thinking was is that I mean we could all look at it from our own perspective scopes, like from what our expertises are. But I would really like if we could all maybe add an idea or thought around how your lane that you're speaking to or expertise on, have a thought to share on, as it relates to some type of Jedi activity or Jedi scope or Jedi whatever, something that has something to do to that effect. Because I'll be doing the same thing too. So, but yeah, it looks, I don't know. I think it's fun to pick apart stuff like this.
Yeah, great. Yeah. So yeah, it'd be great to get everybody's expertise on this and provide comments to you on that. And Jedi, of course, for our listeners is justice, equity, diversity, inclusion.
Yes, thank you, Bevan. And also I wanted to just mention the memo seems to be finalized. So I just wanted to see what I put a little letterhead on there.
Okay. So we've got to get that out.
So yeah.
All right, that memo it's been on our desk for a long time. Okay. Thanks
Yeah,
for
and
reminding.
I got word that within from CRC that we might have one opportunity for one extra internship for this round. So we were thinking of getting one from possibly the city of Annapolis office, maybe. And then I would be basically like a mentor. Possibly I could be a mentor for that.
So you can place an intern somewhere. So you pay them and then you place them somewhere. Is that?
Well, we put out a call, which we just put out for mentors. So the mentor could be, in this case, I would say probably somebody from the city's office, and then myself, and then the mentor would present a project, a paragraph for a project, and then we would review it, see if it sounds like something we would want to accept, and then we would accept it or not. And yes, if it was accepted, it would be a funded internship.
Oh, great.
Yeah. So I don't know. I just feel like the memo maybe kind of, speak to some of that. So it kind of be something to encourage that kind of thinking.
Okay, so who should he get in touch with on the internship or intern possibility, Jackie? Would that be you or? Oh, you're on mute.
Yeah, you can. It just depends on what kind of intern we're thinking about, but what department it would fit best. If we're thinking someone for planning and zoning, or if we're thinking about kind of more public works, or if we're thinking more policy, like in my shop. So that would depend on the intern, Randy.
Cool, makes sense. And I will say another scope to maybe think about is like doing some kind of DEIJ research around like maybe Cars Beach, because I guess you all have access to that space. So maybe with this, I know the Chesapeake Bay Program Office has a whole diversity and inclusion kind of work group, and they're putting out. I know last round we had a couple that did some research and some data collection stuff for the Latino community and stuff. So
yeah, I mean, then that probably would be with me then. So it just depends on, you can think about what kind of opportunity you really want to provide for this person. Yeah. And then, depending on the person who applies, when I used to hire interns, sometimes I used to say, I have projects for you, but what are you interested in doing? And if there was something that they had a particular interest in, be like, yeah, run with it.
Yeah. And we have several, we have interns that come from different, NOAA, we have a partnership with NOAA and things like that. So we float things.
It might even be emergency management, depending on what their interest was.
That's a good point.
Before everybody runs away, I sent Bevan a note. Hillary Raftovich, who goes through the process of getting people sent before the mayor for boards and commissions. She is meeting with the mayor next week, and there are 2 available spots on this commission. So she said she was hounding me this week, saying, try to talk to the commission members if they know somebody they think would be good to have them submit their application to the city as soon as possible.
Okay.
So you got 2 there. And then Hillman Garage, the partnership that is doing the City Dock Hillman Garage design build. They are meeting with the Planning Commission and the Historic Preservation Commission, but they delayed that meeting as they're working on their permits. But they want to make a separate presentation around environmental issues and the green technologies, et cetera, to the Environmental Commission in January now, they're thinking. So I have to get back with Tom Smith and find out timing again, because I said, the commission always meets at the very end of the month. So I don't know if they want to meet with you earlier, if they would want to have a special meeting.
Mhm.
But they, they would need your input on Hillman Garage design.
Okay.
Well, we would have to reschedule our December meeting from when we would normally meet, I think because of the Christmas holiday, Jackie. So I wonder if we could decide to do an early January meeting in lieu of a December meeting and sort of solve that problem that way.
Well, the December meeting is a few days before Christmas. I think Christmas is on a Saturday this year. And I think you guys are scheduled for a Wednesday. I don't know if that's problematic for the commission or not. And it's a
All right.
busy
Yeah,
time
we
to-
can talk schedule offline,
Yeah.
meeting schedule. But thanks for bringing that up because it is close to holidays, so we should sort that out, right?
Some of the
quickly.
commission, and Hillary said that some of the boards and commissions, she's leaving it up, to the chairs, whether or not they're actually meeting in December or not.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. We'll have to talk about that offline, and we can just discuss that and see where the members are and what they want to do. But at any rate, we'll keep them in mind for December or January. So just keep that on our radar, Jackie.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, I keep reminding planning and zoning that they need to get on your schedule. That's not, you can't just go click your fingers and we meet,
Right. Okay. Great. All right. Thanks, Jackie.
Sure.
I know we're kind of 11 minutes after 9, and we've been on here since 7 o'clock. So I do want to be respectful of everybody's time and adjourn the meeting right now.
Is there a second?
Yes.
Second.
So, yeah. All right. All in favor, adjourn.
All right, thanks,
All right.
Bevan. Good job,
Yeah, so
everyone.
meeting adjourned, and we will
Thank
get
you.
over the notes and follow up actions. Thanks, everybody.
Take
Thanks,
care.
everyone. Happy
Thanks.
Thanksgiving.
Bye, good night.
Yeah, happy Thanksgiving.